I'm sure I won't be buying as much beer as I used to, but I might take a couple of cases.
Como had challenged the constitutionality of not being able to buy alcohol in next-door Quebec and bring it home over the provincial border. The court says provinces and territories can restrict it, so long as there is good reason. It says New Brunswick's ability to control liquor supplies within its borders would be undermined if non-corporation liquor could flow freely across borders and out of the garages of bootleggers and home brewers. So what does this all mean for, say, the guy in Ontario who wants to introduce some friends to some great BC wines, or the BC winery that wants to sell online to people in Nova Scotia? Jacqueline Hansen went to find both.
At one of the Quebec liquor stores where Gerard Como stocked up, shoppers were shocked by the ruling.
All the laws, I'm telling you, they make some crazy laws.
It's not like crossing the border into Cuba or anywhere else.
Across the bridge in New Brunswick, cross-border beer buyers say they won't stop.
I'm still gonna go on the other side and buy some.
I might as well go pick up some beer in Quebec and bring it straight back to New Brunswick.
New Brunswick says limits on alcohol are to protect tax dollars.
That's redistributed in society, in the province of New Brunswick, for education services, health services, infrastructure.
But Canada's economy as a whole could be losing out on billions of dollars, according to this researcher.
We really should think about these policies as inhibiting trade and lowering Canada's productivity and increasing the price of goods and services.
This is Pearl Morissette.
This Toronto wine collector says that for him, it's about access to exclusive artisanal wines from across the country.
It's being served at Michelin-star restaurants globally.
Which means
it's the top of the top. If you live out of the province, you can't get it.
And that inability to ship across borders limits business for small wineries, like Crushpad in Summerland, BC. It joined forces with 4 other winemakers as interveners in Como's Supreme Court case, in hopes of being able to sell direct to consumers across Canada.
We can't grow beyond our 15,000 cases unless we can establish new markets.
The owner wants provinces to reconsider their rules.
Think about living in France and living in Bordeaux and trying to order a bottle of champagne from the Champagne region and not being allowed to do that. Now, the French would just not tolerate that on any level. And so as Canadians, for us to have been tolerating this for so long is really rather silly.
The conversation isn't over yet. Provincial and federal governments are working on how the trade of alcohol within Canada can be improved. Those recommendations are due this summer. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, virtually every province and territory have strict limits on how much alcohol you can bring across their borders. Most will allow about 70 cans of beer. The limit is much lower in some territories and Atlantic provinces. Exceed the limits, and you could face criminal charges and hefty fines. The exceptions, Alberta and Manitoba, where there are no limits at all. As you saw in Jacqueline's story, the Supreme Court says these barriers are constitutional as long as the goal isn't to restrict trade. And there's no surprise why some provinces are rather delighted with today's decision.
For New Brunswick, being a small province, it's a huge moneymaker. There's no question about that.
Cash-strapped provinces are eager for the tax revenue. NB Liquor added $167 million to the government's bottom line last year.
For us, it's not about money.
In Nunavut, the restrictions are about reducing consumption and saving lives.
Alcohol regulation in Nunavut is not a question of trade. For us, it's a question of protecting public health and safety.
Leaders there say alcohol contributes to the territory's high suicide rate, which is nearly 9 times the national average.